Europe has been hit with a surge in COVID infections. The 5 countries with the highest cases surge and death rates in the world are all European, putting a cloud of doubt over the holiday season celebrations and the year ahead. France has announced tighter COVID restrictions from the 3rd of January. Employees will have to work from home and public gatherings will be limited to around 2,000 people for indoor events. Officials have warned that hospitals are at risk of being overwhelmed. A record high of 100,000 daily cases was reported in the country this week amid the Omicron surge. This is the highest number of infections in France ever since the pandemic began nearly 2 years ago. Now, more than 3,000 people are currently in intensive care, surpassing the crisis threshold. Several crisis measures are under consideration, which include the restriction of health pass issued by France, a curfew on New Year's Eve, and a nationwide mask mandate. Some health workers also wanted the government to postpone winter holidays for the children. Officials have been urging people not to hold parties or large family gatherings over the holidays. Around 22 million people out of an eligible 40 million people have received COVID booster shots in France so far.
À voir, puisque bien évidemment nos tests antigéniques ne nous permettent pas de savoir sur quel variant on est. Après, c'est vrai que depuis le début du variant Delta, au mois de juin, si mes souvenirs sont bons, on n'avait pas vu autant de positivité aussi rapidement ces derniers temps.
Denmark's total number of infections exceeded 15,000 for the first time. It has the world's highest infection rate, with more than 1,500 cases per 100,000 people. Unlike France, hospital admissions remain below the level seen in the last wave. Denmark had closed its cultural attractions and limited opening hours in bars and restaurants earlier this week. 77.6% of the population was fully vaccinated in the last released government data. 35% of all citizens have received the 3rd dose or the booster shot in the country.
There is no doubt that Europe once again is the epicenter of the global pandemic. The top 10 countries with the highest mortality are in Europe and Central Asia. Last week we had 27,000 extra COVID-19 deaths, 2.6 million new infections last week, which is 40% higher than the same period last year. And now we have Omicron taking over. The good news is, because it's important to give people the hope, there is optimism, we know what to do.
Another Nordic region which showed very low infection rate in the past was Iceland, but Iceland registered a record of 672 cases over the last 24 hours. The country has a population of just 366,000 and never reported more than 200 daily cases until this month. During last year's wave in the autumn, daily infection totals in Iceland never exceeded 1,000. Now, Greece has announced a new restriction from January, mainly targeting nighttime entertainment and sports venues. Under the new measures, the high protection masks would be compulsory at supermarkets, public transport, and eating establishments. Bars and restaurants will have to close at midnight, and no standing customers at entertainment venues will be allowed. There will also be a maximum limit of 6 people per table. New COVID-19 infections have surged to a record high of around 9,000 cases in the last 24 hours. 66 deaths have been reported as per the Health Ministry. Now, for more updates on this, our correspondent Trent Murray is joining us live from Berlin. Thanks for being with us, Trent. Now, several new restrictions have been put in place in Germany, France, and several other European nations in view of these surging cases of COVID driven by Omicron. Now, do you think that this will dampen the spread of the infections variant?
Well, that's certainly the aim of lawmakers and health officials that are making these changes to coronavirus restrictions rules right across the European Union. They say that if the public can just have a little bit more patience and see these new rules enforced, then the hope is they'll be able to minimise at least the spread of Omicron. And for that reason that we're seeing a number of those new rules announced, like you mentioned. I mean, France is just the latest country to announce a raft of new measures. That is because in the past week alone, 1 in 100 Parisians have tested positive for COVID-19. That is why you are seeing these mask mandates now returned, limits on New Year's Eve parties, and even French lawmakers now are being asked to debate a change to the country's COVID pass, which would essentially only allow people to use that pass to go to restaurants or the gym if they've been vaccinated. A negative test would no longer suffice. So it's those types of tightening of restrictions that health officials say are needed to both reduce the amount of Omicron in the community, that are transmitting around the community, but also to encourage people to come forward and get their vaccination if they haven't already.
Right, and Trent, are the governments using this time to deliver booster shots to as many people as possible? What is the status on boosters and even the second doses, given that vaccine hesitancy that still exists in European nations?
Yeah, it really is a case of all hands on deck now, trying to get those booster shots out. I mean, where I am here in Germany, around 37% of the population as a whole have had their booster jab. Obviously, the government wants that a lot higher. We saw over the Christmas break that in some places vaccine centres remained open, hoping that people would use the public holidays to come forward and get their boosters. We've also seen legal changes in recent weeks which actually allow veterinarians and dentists to give the booster shots, and that is because the government is just so focused on trying to get people's levels boosted in order to stave off a massive wave of Omicron. It's a similar picture right across Europe. There are varying levels of degrees, I should say, in terms of just how much of the population is vaccinated in different parts of the EU. But certainly all of the public health messaging around now is about getting those booster shots. In fact, across the United Kingdom in recent days, we saw a text message sent out to all mobile phones encouraging people to come and get their booster shots. So really, authorities are trying everything, not just to get the boosters out, but also, as you rightly say, to encourage people that maybe haven't had any vaccination yet to come forward.
Trent, thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Trent bringing us all the latest on COVID out of Europe.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.